Hey guys, Mrhappy here, and today I want to talk about Summoner. I've been telling a lot of people that it's actually quite an overpowered job, so I want to delve into some of that right now. Keep in mind that since I've said that, I've come to realize it's not as overpowered as I initially thought. I think it's pretty on level with the rest of the jobs in the game, but we'll talk about that a little bit moving forward. So we're going to be going over rotations, potential damage output, pets, AoE, and all that other fun stuff, just a general overview of the job. So first let's talk about the Summoner itself. What is Summoner? In A Realm Reborn, a Summoner is a powerful damage over time user that has pets that assist them. These pets, known as Eggies, can fulfill different roles and enhance the DPS of the Summoner greatly if used properly. While playing a Summoner, it may look like you aren't doing much, but trust me, you are. So, before going over any rotations for the Summoner, I think we should cover their most important ability, Aether Flow. Aether Flow, not only does this grant the Summoner a large percentage of their MP back, and you can do it once every minute, but it gives them 3 charges of Aether Flow that they can spend over the course of that 1 minute cooldown. Keep in mind you can never have more than 3 of these stacks, so if you use it and then wait a minute, you won't get 6 stacks, or you won't get any additional stacks. So, since you only get 3 of these charges per minute, you'll need to be very careful with how you spend them. Now, there's 3 abilities that a Summoner can use to stack. You can use their stacks on when they have Aether Flow available, and that's Energy Drain, Bane, and Fester. Energy Drain will do a moderate amount of damage and restore HP and MP. I'll do it right here on this guy. There we go. That's Energy Drain, nothing too fancy. Then you have Bane, which will... I guess I'll pull this guy to show you Bane. So, Bane, on the other hand, will spread your 3 dots, Bio, 2, Miasma, and Bio. It'll spread them to a nearby target, like so. See, now they both have the stacks on them. And finally, you have Fester, which does 100 potency damage for every dot that is on a target. As you can see right there, it just did quite a bit of damage. Let me just actually kill these guys now before we continue on with the overview and the guide. So now I have no more Aether Flow stacks, but as you can see, I can just use it again right here. It doesn't have, I know he doesn't have all his dots on. I just wanted to kill him, so I used Fester. Keep in mind, you should never take that much damage while soloing either. So, they're all right. All 3 of these abilities have their own situations where they're more useful. You almost never use Energy Drain, though, unless you're really low on HP or MP and you really need that boost to get up to a safe spot for both of those numbers. And Bane can only be used in AoE situations where the enemies are really, really close together. It has an extremely small range. So Fester will pretty much be your go-to ability for your Aether Flow stacks as a Summoner. Now that that's out of the way, let's go over single target rotations. Despite seeming like a complex job, the rotation for a Summoner is actually really, really simple. So you have 3 main dots that you'll want to apply. Bio 2, Miasma, and Bio. And you're going to want to apply them in that order due to the duration of which they last. So as you can see, Bio 2 will last 30 seconds, Miasma will last 24 seconds, and Bio will last 18 seconds. This is the main reason why you want to cast them in that order. It's so that the longest spell will stay on. You basically don't want all 3 spells to come off of the enemy at the same time. And that's because if they're all off of the enemy at the same time, then you're doing no damage over time while you're actually reapplying the dots. So even when your Bio falls off, your Miasma is still ticking. So while you're reapplying Bio, Miasma is still doing damage over time, and when you're reapplying Miasma, Bio 2 is still doing damage over time. Now, there's going to be times where it's not going to play out exactly like that, especially when you're reapplying the dots. That timer is not going to be so efficient, but that's how you're always going to start the fight. Then you just need to reapply the dots as they fall off, and you should be okay. Once you've done that, you're pretty much just going to go to spamming Ruin. However, you also want to use Fester whenever it's available. So remember, you can use 3 Festers per minute. So as you can see here, I'm going to dot up this target. As soon as Bio lands, I Fester, and then I start spamming Ruin. Now, there's a real reason why you want to use Ruin over Ruin 2. Ruin 2 actually, there's a few reasons actually. One is that Ruin 2 costs almost twice the mana, which is never a good thing considering it does the exact same potency. So if you can save mana, why not? 2 is that it blinds the target. And there's going to be times where your tanks maybe want to apply a blind, such as your paladin using flash, may want to apply a blind at a specific time. Keep in mind if you have a warrior tank, it's totally different. Applying the blind for them is actually great utility and you should do it. once every time the blind falls off. But for the most part, Ruin is your go-to spell. Ruin 2 is not the spell that you are going to be spamming. So that is really the big thing. The only other use for Ruin 2, really, and I'll do it right here on, I guess I'll do it on this guy since that other one seems to be preoccupied. So as you can see, I have Bio, I have Miasma, and I have, well, I have Bio 2, Bio 2. So I'm casting Ruin, right? And I haven't used my Fester, and I kind of don't want to use it while I can cast another spell. So I use Ruin 2 to trigger my global cooldown. So that way I can use Fester in a time where the global cooldown is actually ticking. Since it doesn't sit on the global cooldown, that is when it's best used. It's also best used right after Bio. You can do the same trick on Bio, but you have to be more careful with the timing because Bio takes a second after you cast it to actually apply. And if you do Fester too soon when Bio's not on the target like that, then it'll do a lot less damage. So you have to be very, very careful with this. And I'll show you what I mean by that right now. I'm going to cast Fester on this target that just decided to aggro me really quick. Bam. Without waiting for Bio to appear, Fester only did 405 damage. I did it too quickly. So you need to give yourself some sort of delay between actually applying Bio and then casting Fester. Right now it doesn't matter, so I'll just kill him. So next is your Aoe rotation. Now this is not going to be easy to show, but I can just give you a general overlay of what abilities you'll use for this. And you actually have quite strong Aoe. Now the first is your Shadow Flare, which is this ability. When you cast it on a target, it summons a giant dark circle on the ground, which will do Aoe damage over time and slow. This has a very long cast time, and it also costs a lot of mana though, so I don't recommend spamming this in any fight. After that, you want to apply all of your dots to a single target and Bane them. Make sure they're, like I said, make sure with Bane that they're really close together. Bane, if all your dots are ticking on multiple targets, that's 110 potency on all the targets. So if you have like 6 targets and you Bane, you're hitting for 660 potency every second. It's 110 on each individual enemy. But that's the kind of DPS you'll do with Bane, assuming that you actually get a situation where you can hit enough targets with it. So it's really, really good. And after you apply all your dots and expend the Aether Flow stack to spread the Bane onto the dots, you're going to want to use Miasma 2. This actually requires you to run up and be in melee range, as I'll show right here. Miasma 2 just does it right in the range. Now that is a very short-lasting dot, mind you. So most of the time, you're going to want to hope that the targets are dead before you have to reapply it. But as long as you're getting all of that done, you're going to do a lot of AoE damage, trust me. So once you... Hold on, let me just check something real quick. And also, you also have to keep in mind that you have one final move, and I almost forgot to mention this, just because this move... You don't want to use it in an AoE rotation, and that's Tri-Disaster. Tri-Disaster deals unaspected damage with a potency of 30 to all nearby targets. You can read, you know what it does. But that's just the thing, it does 30 potency, and it costs 266 MP. The radius is just as small as Bane's is. It's mostly just used for the bind. I don't recommend ever using Tri-Disaster in an AoE rotation. Between Shadow Flare, applying all of your dots, Baning, Miasma 2, and Tri-Disaster, you burn like a third of your MP pool just to get to that point where you can even cast Tri-Disaster. I don't recommend wasting any more MP. Not to mention, it's got a really, really long cast time. So I just avoid using Tri-Disaster in AoE situations unless you need an AoE bind. That's the only time it's ever really worth using. Also, you have a pet that I'm going to go over in a little bit. Depending on your pet, they usually all have some form of AoE, so that gets factored in too, but you don't actually have to actively think about doing that. It's just going to happen as long as your pet is set to do it automatically. So other than that, just start single target DPSing something down after you get to Miasma 2. You can start using your Festers if you want on the targets that have the 3 dots. As long as they start dying, it's all good. There really isn't a fight where it's going to take you more than 30 seconds of that kind of heavy AoE damage. So at that point, you can just start a single target rotation on a target of your choice. So quick note about Shadow Flare though. I know a lot of people like to use Shadow Flare as a single target DPS over time. I would not recommend doing this past the initial cast of the fight. Let's say I'm pulling this target. It's going to stay in this, like, let's say I'm standing right here and I'm going to pull this target. Me opening with Shadow Flare is perfectly okay because it's outside of the fight. It's like an initiation almost. And I can just go right into Bio 2, Miasma Bio. It's almost no different from actually, you know, doing what I would normally do. However, it has a few drawbacks to it if you try to use it in the middle of a fight. A, it's got a very long cast time. B, if the boss or enemy moves, it's immediately useless and you've just wasted MP and time. And it has a very steep mana cost. It costs 212 mana. Now, that's a lot. I know it doesn't seem like a lot because Bio 2 is 186, but considering that Shadow Flare is only an extra, what is it, like 20, 25 damage? It's an extra 25 potency every 3 seconds approximately, depending on when you applied it, of course. It'll do about 250 potency. It's just not worth the extra MP cost. I would rather use that on Ruin. It can be useful on a single target if you need the slow that it applies. But for the most part, just save it for your AoE situations. It's nothing like Flame Arrow for Bard, since it has such a long cast time and it costs a lot of mana. I just don't recommend using it past the opening of a fight. So, the final thing you need to worry about is your pet. Now, the summoner has 3 pets, and I'm going to summon each of them for you right now. I'm going to swift cast the first one real quick. So first, we have Garuda-egi. Garuda-egi is actually the last one you get, and I just figured that because it's summon 1, summon 2, and summon 3. At level 45, Carbuncle will get your caster Carbuncle will get replaced by Garuda. She's very, very good, and she is a ranged caster DPS. Next, you have Titan. This is going to actually take me a while to summon, unlike Garuda, because I don't have swift cast. Titan is a tank, and he's actually very good for soloing, especially if you have an attacker stance Chocobo that you want to use. He is excellent. He holds a great enmity, and he's very, very durable. So you can actually AoE grind with him a lot, and it's very, very effective. His Kindle's also very good for farming as well, just to use it every 5 minutes. It's excellent. Finally, you have Ifrit. Ifrit is summon 3, but he's technically the first of these 3 that you're going to get, and he is my personal favorite. He is a melee DPS that does significantly higher potency than all the other summons, but he's melee range, so he comes with a high risk, high reward sort of pet play style. So, really, we're just talking about DPS-wise, what kind of pet you want to use. Titan is a solo pet, bottom line. There's almost never a point where... Okay, apparently I aggroed something because Titan has an agenda of his own, so we'll take care of this real quick and then I'll continue. But anyway, as I was saying, Titan is really a solo pet, but they can all be used while soloing is the thing. So I've seen groups go into dungeons with Titan just because they don't trust their tanks and things like that. But generally, you won't use Titan in a group. So the choice becomes between Ifrit-egi and Garuda-egi. Now, I think I might make an entire video comparing the two, because it seems all summoners are hell-bent on using Garuda-egi. And in reality, you have to do it it's on a per fight basis. You have to decide which one you want to use. Ifrit-egi deals more damage per minute on targets that either A, won't instantly kill him with an AoE, or B, if there's a fight where stun resistance is a problem, for example, Ifrit himself, you really don't want anything building stun resistance on Ifrit. So Ifrit-egi's attack that stuns, you don't want to use it. That's a perfect example of a fight where Ifrit-egi is just a no-go no matter what you do. Garuda-egi outparses him in all means of the word during that situation where stun cannot be used. So Garuda, for that reason, is a much safer choice. But she is susceptible to dying at range the same way that Ifrit is susceptible to dying in melee range. So no matter what, they're both in sort of risky situations, but they'll have to deal with different risks on fight. Raw damage-wise, Ifrit-egi, even with Garuda's Contagion, and summoners know this, and I'll go over that ability in a second, Ifrit outparses Garuda. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over the pet abilities between the two. Garuda has Windblade, which just deals 100 potency every 3 seconds about. It has a 1 second cast time, really, so yeah, about every 3 seconds after the first second passes. Shockwave, which does a knockback and deals 90 damage. If a target can't be knocked back, Garuda's most effective in melee range because of this. She does an extra 100. She does an extra 90 potency every minute and a half, but that's still a really long cooldown. Aerial Slash every 30 seconds does 90 potency to an AoE on a single target. Not a big deal. Contagion's the big one, though. Once a minute, she'll extend the duration of damage over time effects already cast by the Master by 15 seconds. This gives each of your dots 5 more ticks, which is about 550 additional potency. However, if you're going on a total of damage per minute, Ifrit actually does more damage. Crimson Cyclone, we'll do it twice in the first minute, really, and then it depends. It's on a 40-second cooldown, so he'll do it right at the start, and then he'll do it again within the same minute. Then he'll do it again at 80 and 120, etc., etc. 105 potency, does more than Garuda's Shockwave by 15. Burning Strike is his basic attack like Garuda's Wind Blade, does 20 more potency. And Flaming Crush does 105 in an AoE, that's 15 more potency. So adding all that up constantly with buffs and everything, Ifrit does do more damage. He's just riskier. His Kindle also does more damage because it has a damage over time effect. So it comes down to preference. If you want to extend your dots so you don't have to worry about reapplying them as often, Garuda is a very safe choice. She's definitely the easier of the two pets to use. It makes your job a lot easier, but it doesn't do more damage. And I'm gonna make a video about this entirely with all the numbers. Don't worry, I've already decided I'm gonna do that. Flaming Crush on the other, or Ifrit as a whole, Ifrit does more damage per minute, even with factoring in the 15 seconds you get from Contagion, even with Raging Strikes. Ifrit does more damage, and like I said, I will do a parser about that, but you have to do it on a per fight basis. That's all I'm gonna say. Look at the fights, see which one you would prefer to use, and go for it. That's all I gotta say. So with all of that out of the way, all that's really left to talk about with Summoner is their utility, which is pretty significant. They have their DPS cooldowns for their pets, Rouse and Spur, and these both make them do 40% more damage, really. See, healing magic potency and damage dealt by 40%, and this one's just damage dealt by... It increases their attack power by 40%. So it is, in most regards, a 40% increase. They also have Virus, which is very useful. This is actually more of a defensive raid cooldown. It lowers the strength... Who's attacking stuff while I'm trying to record? Okay, well, you know, I'm just going to move over here now. So, it's a good defensive cooldown since it reduces strength, dex, int, and mind on the target, which can make them do less damage most of the time or heal for less if they have a healing mechanic, so it's very useful for things like that. Eye for an Eye can be used on other targets to help keep them alive, so you can actually use this as a tank cooldown as a summoner, which is immensely useful in certain fights. And they also have some other tools, like they have Sustain. Sustain heals their pet back up, and they can also heal themselves or their pet back up with Physic or Psychic, whatever you want to call it. I've heard it called so many different things at this point. But the big thing is Resurrection. They are the only job that has an in-combat battle res, outside of healers, of course. So you can really relieve a lot of stress from your healers by being the one to res somebody with Resurrection and let your healers keep dealing with the tanks and the rest of the raid. There's a few things that you can't do with this Resurrection that most healers will know about at this point when it comes to the weakness debuff. I'm sure some people know at this point, but some people don't. Don't worry. I don't think it's intended. It's a bug that I don't think is intended, and they're probably going to fix it soon. So, with all that out of the way, that's pretty much all their utility. The last thing is in Kindle, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier. It's your 5-minute cooldown. It's a huge DPS. It's just a burst DPS ability for your pet. You really want to have Rouse and Spur up when you do this, and as I've said, Ifrit's does more damage. Garuda's does less damage. It's bottom line. Ifrit's does more damage. Bottom line. And it's just a heavy offensive cooldown. So use it when you need to burst something down very quickly. Remember, 5 minutes. So you have to be sure the time you're using it is going to be most effective, because in some fights you won't get a second chance at this. The only other thing really to talk about here is, I guess, their subclasses, really. And this isn't, I guess, this is actually pretty important. Archer and Thaumaturge are the subclasses that they pull abilities from. From Archer, Raging Strikes and Quelling Strikes are both good. Quelling Strikes, not so much. You don't really generate a lot of enmity until you start using Fester. So for the first 7.5 seconds of a fight, you're really not going to generate a lot of enmity, which gives the tank a lot of time. So it's not as useful, but Raging Strikes is immensely useful. Increasing your damage dealt by 20%. Massive. No matter how you look at it, it's an extra dot tick, really. If you look at Contagion, this would add an extra dot tick to Contagion. So even with that, we'll still talk about that later. Hawk's Eye, completely useless. Dex does nothing for you, and physical accuracy does nothing for you, so just ignore it. Now, Thaumaturge is the center of a little bit of controversy. Now, Swift Cast is a given. Next spell is cast immediately. This allows you to instantly resummon a pet, instantly raise someone in battle, instantly cast one of your dots maybe if you're moving. It gives you so many options. Swift Cast Shadow Flare is also very useful. So it's a given. You need it. Level 26. Surecast, less useful if you're not getting hit. It's simply not as useful. But you don't really have anything else to put on your bars, so why not? I don't have it, but there's no point in not having it, really. Finally, Thunder. Now, this is another place of where people tend to disagree. Now, Thunder is a damage over time ability, so you think it goes really well with the rest of your kit, but it really doesn't, and here's why. First, MP cost, 212. That is way too much for a spell that does not give you too much in return. Second, it doesn't benefit Fester at all. Fester, as you read it, can only have its potency increased by Bio, Bio 2, and Miasma, and your own personal ones at that. So it doesn't help boost your DPS. All it really does is give you another dot. That's one less global cooldown you have to cast Ruin. So Thunder is generally a no-go. You just don't want to use it. I'm telling you, it's really not effective at all for Summoner. While you're leveling up the first few levels, it's good. Before you have Miasma or Bio 2, it's good to just have another dot to place on the target. But if you're going to do that, the order really goes. It should go right before Bio, since you can instant cast Bio after Thunder's been reapplied, and you can do that for the rest of the fight. So if you're going to do it, that's how you do it, but at level 50, I just don't recommend using Thunder at all. I think it's an ability that gets overutilized when it's really not that great. So, there's not really much more to talk about. I mean, I could talk about the pet hotbars. I guess I should talk about the pet hotbars, right? Because a lot of people are generally confused as to how they can utilize these to their maximum. And it's actually really difficult, because these you can't macro these at all. There's no pet macros in the game. You can rebind these in the hotbar settings, so if you want to do that to make them more accessible, you can also drag them. If I would unlock this first, because I'm totally great at recording, and if I would also go to this instead of trying to pull it from there, as you can see, you can drag them here. Now, you have things like Obey and Steady and Sick and things like that. So Obey refrains them from using certain actions, so you can trigger when to use them. This is especially useful for Garuda, because Garuda will tend to use Contagion at a time when it's not optimal. Depending on the beginning of the fight, not so much, but for the rest of the fight, it's good to have control of Contagion. So Obey is actually very, very useful, but for Ifrit, it doesn't really matter at all unless you want to prevent him from stunning. I'm not even sure which abilities Obey actually works on, so let's find out right now. This is gonna be fun for us guys. All right, go get him. You're on Obey. You better be on Obey, because I told you to be on Obey. So he did a stun anyway. He did that anyway. Is he gonna do Flaming Crush anyway? He's just doing all his cooldowns, so he totally didn't listen to me. I don't know, maybe he has to be in battle first. That's the thing, the pet commands are really finicky at the time, and they definitely need some work before Summoner can really stand out. They just need to make each ability, you can say, oh, I want you to automatically use this ability, and I don't want you to automatically use this ability. It can't be a general term like Obey is, so Summoners do need some work in that aspect. And so you can rebind these to use them, but because it's very finicky, even with Obey, you have to do Obey after the fight starts. You have to start the fight with Obey and not Sick. That's the very awkward part. See, watch this, Obey. So now he'll go into the fight, and let's see which abilities he'll use. He'll just use his basic attack ability right there. It's the only ability he'll use. And then I can control Crimson Cyclone and Flaming Crush. Now this also has drawbacks to it, because you can't give your pet a command while you are using abilities yourself. So you have to stop using abilities, or you have to trigger a global cooldown with Ruin 2 or Bio in order to properly control your pet. It's a flaw. And before Summoner can really live up to its maximum, it's a flaw that needs to be fixed. Bottom line. So hopefully that helps you a little bit understand how the pets work. Remember, I've already showed you can drag it onto your bars, you can rebind your pet hotbar. So it's really going to come down to a matter of how much you want to work to make Summoner work for you. Their damage is really good. They have good mobile DPS, which is something that casters tend to have a problem with. You can spam Ruin 2 while you're moving, though I wouldn't recommend it. And you can have your dots tick while you're moving. You can have a pet that follows the target. You just have to be aware of what your pet is doing at all times. Make sure it's doing the most optimal thing. And your limit break is the same as the Black Mage limit break, so pretty good. Overall, I really like the Summoner job. It just needs a few kinks. One last thing it definitely needs is during big fates, your dots don't do anything to that target. You can apply your dots, and if they are not on the first 2 rows of dots and you try to fester, nothing will happen. For 24-man content, and even for 8-man content, this needs to be changed, and the way that dots are displayed in general need to be changed. Summoner gets kind of bit by the game itself, the UI, and how everything works. So once they fix that, Summoner will be a lot better. Until then, it is what it is. I like it. I just get a little bit frustrated with it at times. Anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, favorite, subscribe, and share. Also, let me know if you would A, want a Black Mage versus Summoner video, or B, if you would like an Ifrit-egi versus Garuda-egi with all the numbers explaining why Ifrit-egi does more damage than Garuda-egi. And he's just as hasty as Garuda-egi is. I didn't even say to attack. It didn't even hit me yet. It was just looking at me funny, and he went over there. Well, he wants his spotlight in the video, I guess. Since I have him out anyway, he's like, no one's ever gonna use me. They're not gonna listen to you. Just summon me for this video, please. Don't use Garuda. I gave him what he wanted. So, I guess if you want the Ifrit versus Garuda-egi video, I can definitely do that. You just have to let me know in the comments below. I'll make sure to actually get to them. You can send me a personal message on Facebook or Twitter, which you should follow me at, by the way, because I can answer questions much more easily from those places. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, take care.